You're listening to The Changeover. Coming up today,
create content specifically for people who are already in your sales pipeline, or create content that you can use in a nurture email sequence for proposals that went cold. Focus on the very bottom of the funnel first, where you get good sales marketing alignment, where content just sort of tends to be more efficient anyway because you're serving it right up to the person who's the most likely to take an action with you. Like, these are the two highest quality formats for content generally. An original research piece, do 1 a year. 2 a year would be great. Make your site the primary source for a new statistic. And the other is thought leadership. Take a little stand. Come out with a point of view. Say what's good and bad. Another thing that I've learned the last few years is that if you shift your goal from visits to views, you may get a lot more visibility. You can get visibility for your brand without attracting visitors to your website. There are 2 types of AI visitors to your website. One is a bot that's visited many times, just like Googlebot. It's just trying to understand what you do. The other is the agent that clicks around, reports back to the user, can fill out your forms. It's going to get weird.
So my guest today is Andy Crestodina, co-founder and CMO of Orbit Media Studios. Andy's experience goes back to 2001. With a focus on content marketing, SEO, and analytics. And he's been recognized as one of the top 10 online marketing experts by Forbes. He's also a frequent speaker at marketing conferences, doing something like 100 presentations and webinars every year. Sure. And he joined us in 2024 as one of our keynote speakers at Experience Inbound, the marketing and sales conference we host with our friends at Stream Creative. Andy's book, Content Chemistry, is in its 7th edition. We are here to talk a little bit about the changes that have taken place between the 1st and the 7th, which is a lot, I would guess.
It's a ton.
And everything else that's changing right now in content creation and content marketing. Andy, thank you so much for joining us on The Changeover. And I wanted to ask if there's anything you'd care to add to my intro.
No, Jo, I think you summarized it nicely, except that maybe to say just that we're all here in the Midwest, right?
We are. Did you get hit by that crazy snowstorm we had yesterday?
Yeah, we have weather here. We all do. Yep. But no, I'm here in Chicago, and but I was born in Wisconsin and kind of have roots in Wisconsin and Iowa. But then, started web development in 2001 and sort of never looked back. There's 53 of us now. I'm kind of the guy who never pivoted. Still doing website development and optimization.
But doing it in a very, very different way from 2001, I would venture to say.
So
which
different.
Leads me to my first question for you, which is about the book, Content Chemistry. It's now in its 7th edition, which is a pretty huge milestone for any kind of book, but one that is this. I mean, you can see I tabbed
got a lot of bookmarks.
Yeah. It is a comprehensive handbook that, I mean, if I were a writer who wanted to really dig into content marketing, or a marketer who really wanted to learn better how to write for marketing, this is a great primer, great place to begin, and probably you can get a pretty solid start if you manage to finish the whole thing. It is dense, it is filled with explanations and examples, and what can I say? There's probably not a thing that I would be able to say is missing. So that tells me 2 things. First, it really is changing. It's changing all the time. It's been changing since we got started here. And second, even seasoned marketers are still trying to crack the code when it comes to content marketing. So we were so selfishly looking forward to this episode, not just for the chance to interview somebody who is such a leader in this industry, but also because we have questions. We asked the question to our internal team here. We polled them, asked them for their questions, and
great.
You'll be getting some of those in our conversation. But I wanted to ask you first, what is, if you could say, the one biggest thing that's changed between the 1st edition and the 7th edition of your book? What would you say that is?
Well, the 1st edition was printed at like a FedEx Kinko's with, and I had just sort of taken some of my better articles and tried to combine them. And it really just sort of felt like this thing was kind of paper clipped together, almost literally, because it was like a self-printed thing. And it had things that just we don't really do anymore. There were earlier editions have like a Google Plus advice, and it talks a lot about like, mentioning people in Twitter, and like the targeting was different, and like the standards weren't in place yet. A lot of the UX standards, including all the stuff in the conversion section, we just understand much better now the psychology of visitors and why people do and don't take action. My thinking has evolved a lot. Conversion and lead generation on websites happens largely because the page sort of identifies with the emotions and the point of view of the visitor. It supports its assertions with evidence. It has clear, specific calls to action. It triggers cognitive bias. It manages a visual hierarchy. I just didn't think, 15 years ago, I just wasn't thinking about it in such a structured way. So all these kind of ideas have evolved into sort of frameworks. And then the frameworks now sort of evolve into prompts, because I could give you a prompt that will audit any of your pages against everything I just mentioned. And so the book has become much, much more useful now in this era when standards are better defined, frameworks are more evolved. And now, of course, with prompts, there's things you can do that easily, without 20 years of experience to get the kind of results that we work hard at every day.
Right. And it feels like content itself has a lot more jobs to do as well than it had to do before. And so it's actually, could we have a luckier moment, right, to have AI be coming in on the scene to be helping us out with a lot of this work. And that leads me actually to my next question for you, which is, with AI now shaping the way that we're creating content, and search behaviors, of course, also changing, we've got a whole slew of strategic and tactical decisions to make now that maybe we didn't have 10 years ago, certainly not 20 years ago and more. So for our listeners who are primarily B2B industrial marketers, what are the biggest choices that they need to be thinking about right now and making to stay competitive in their own content marketing?
Well, content is a marathon, and a lot of brands just don't have the horsepower in-house to produce a steady stream of weekly articles and videos. that's really hard to pull off, and I get that. So I think a good beginning for an industrial brand, for example, I love that. This is a great vertical to focus on, is to analyze who's in your pipeline right now, your sales pipeline. Look at your prospects. For fun, you could give AI a profile of your prospects, or just write a document that defines all of their common traits, or have AI create a persona for you. And then create content specifically for people who are already in your sales pipeline. Or create content that you can use in a nurture email sequence for proposals that went cold. Focus on the very bottom of the funnel first, where you get good sales marketing alignment, where content just sort of tends to be more efficient anyway, because you're serving it right up to the person who's the most likely to take an action with you. Like they may already be considering you as an option. If you can produce articles, even a few, that demonstrate extreme levels of expertise on the key decision criteria for your prospects, and then just use that in following up a sales call, that content will drive sales. That's bottom line, bottom of funnel, bottom of the sales funnel content. So people get kind of exhausted by content marketing. It's like, oh, I keep making more. Like I gotta make another one. Like this is, I committed to doing TikTok. I gotta make a TikTok video.
Yeah.
Maybe that might help, but what will definitely help is bottom of funnel content. Start there.
Well, and I think you make a good case there for, those are the people you know best already anyway. So you have a really good shot at satisfying their needs with content.
How about transcripts of your last 20 sales calls? We routinely record calls today, and then give those to AI and have it recommend 6 articles, or have it write outlines for the best article, or have it define what the most common objections are. Objection handling. Do you have any content that handles objections? Content that aligns exactly with the true story in their life when they started looking for help? What
you're talking about here too, though, is really illustrates the need, though, to be aligning the sales and the marketing teams really closely. You're talking about delivering content, immediately after a sales conversation that says to the person who was in that conversation, I heard you, I listened, I have this resource for you, and I think you're going to find it useful. And I think that doesn't just demonstrate the usefulness of content, but that human side of the why behind the content. And I think that's really important too. And that leads me to my next question, which is about blogging. We're talking about content. We're talking about content repurposing, starting with maybe a really big project and then getting as much use out of it as possible through various distribution channels and in different formats. But what about that blog? They take a lot of work, right? They take effort to be meaningful, to be good. How much blogging? How much is right now? And should I even be doing it if organic search is changing? What am I supposed to be doing?
I am friends with, lucky to say, a collaborator sometimes with John Jantsch from Duct Tape Marketing, who's like a content legend. And he said that the word blog is a little bit tired and maybe we're past that. And let's just call these things guides. And when he works with a client, he'll take like the best, he'll find common themes in their blog and help pull them together and then change that section to be called guides and just put like 6 guides in there. You don't even need dates. Just turn your blog into a set of guides if you don't have the energy to commit to a steady stream of things. Another idea is, so you've written your bottom of funnel content, the sales, marketing, alignment stuff. Where do you publish that? Doesn't really matter, but sure, the blog, that's a good start for the blog. If you don't have, the calories and, budget to keep a steady stream going, maybe remove the dates from all your blog posts, take the template, the UX of the blog, the detail page, and just remove the dates so things don't look as old or as fast, and focus on evergreen content only. Don't put any announcements or news in there, just evergreen, detailed, long form things. So now we're moving up the funnel, content strategy. There's 2 formats we could all focus on. Far more important than frequency is just the quality. These are the 2 highest quality formats for content generally. An original research piece, do 1 a year. 2 a year would be great. Make your site the primary source for a new statistic. And the other is thought leadership. Take a little stand. Come out with a point of view. Say what's good and bad. Draw a line in the sand on any topic, even kind of a mundane topic, but something that your audience would find interesting. If you only have time to do a few things, and you've already nailed kind of the bottom of funnel stuff that will support sales close rates, then I would suggest evergreen topics, but highly differentiated formats, such as original research and thought leadership. Those are just the things. Original research crushes it in search because it attracts links all day from journalists. And thought leadership crushes it in social because it starts conversations. It's a point of view. It's a personal
Something
thing.
New to talk about. Yeah, absolutely.
And AI can't compete with either of those. AI cannot make
new
original
material.
research. And AI doesn't have a point of view or doesn't care about anything. So as soon as you tell a story or say what you care about, you're different from AI. So they're future-proof. They're higher performing. They may be a little harder to make. Original research takes more time. Thought leadership takes more guts.
Yeah, for sure.
Actually,
a quick follow-up to that. So original research, it's high effort, right? It's often high effort and resource intensive. What kind of advice would you give to, say, a small, scrappy marketing team, a couple of people, to be able to put something out that is valuable to their audiences on kind of a shoestring budget?
Step 1 would be to look around. You may already have data. For us, I have access to lots of data.
Well, like you said, the CRM is already there, right?
Yeah. My wife just bought a new water heater. What are the most common reasons water heaters fail? Hey, let me just talk to my team and add that to a checklist. When they go to do installations, they can just mark this off and we'll gradually collect data about the top reasons water heaters break down. All those HVAC associations and trade magazines will love that data. If you pitch them on a topic and you have a new data point, you're going to win the pitch.
Sure, but you just asked me to do something which requires me to enlist non-marketers in my marketing efforts, right? As part of my data collection.
It's optional. There are other ways to go, but the upside is huge. I'll tell you a story from years ago. I once put a notebook next to my desk, like this one, like paper, And just for 1 year, when people called to talk about a website redesign, I wrote down every complaint they made about their current provider or their current website.
Wow. What did you have by the end of the year?
27 complaints about website companies.
That you were then able to categorize and make sense out of.
And I haven't looked in many years, but it ranked number 1 for web design complaints. It attracted like 200 comments of sort of angry people. I made a chart that showed most complaints about web companies are actually not about design, even though people always ask about design when they find a company. In the end, everyone loves or hates their web company based on service. Non-responsive was the most common word. I made a word cloud out of these things. Overpromise. That's what people hate about their web companies 2 years after their site goes live. So I published this data like, hey, guess what? The reasons you love or don't like your web company is about service. Here's how to properly qualify a new. So yeah, the effort was low. I just had to remember to look down while talking on the phone to like write down why people capture complaints. So anyway, there's data everywhere. You can find it all over the place. But sometimes the data is actually in-house.
Right. You just need to know where to look and start thinking really critically and creatively about where you can find those sources. So another thing that's going on right now that we're seeing a lot of is the proliferation of channels for content distribution, for engagement, for obviously for listening, social listening. There are so many. How does a marketer right now make a smart decision about where to be, where not to be, and what to be doing there? What's a smart cadence? Say, for example, on LinkedIn. How do they decide? You can't be everywhere, right? I mean, there's no way. Right. Even personally, I don't even use Facebook anymore because I can't. So what should a marketer be doing to figure out where to be?
People that have tried have discovered that you can't really move an audience from one channel to another. So our job is to go to be where they are. And by channels, if you expand that a little bit, you think about what podcasts do they listen to? What YouTube channels do they watch? What trade magazines do they subscribe to? What associations are they members of? What events do they attend? This is just a normal PR exercise where you want to find where your audience is and make your messages present there.
So it's a normal PR exercise, but in a digital landscape, that might require some tools. Do you have any favorites that you like to use to dig up that information?
Probably the top of mind for a lot of people today is SparkToro. Yeah.
I love it.
Just type it in. Yeah. This sounds, I sort of feel bad saying this because I love Rand, but if you go to SparkToro and using a Chrome extension to take a full page screenshot, take that tall image of the free SparkToro report, you can upload that to ChatGPT and start talking to it about, where else or how to engage in those channels. If
you pay for it, you can download those whole data files and talk to them with your AI as well, which I think is super fun.
The hidden gems alone is worth the cost. There's a section called hidden gems. I mean, that's what we're trying to find, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so you've decided, right? You're going in, you're digging out all of the information. You find that your audience is typically pretty present on, let's say, 4 or 5 platforms. Oh, that's a lot still. So how do I attend to those without making myself want to die?
Well, go back to the goal. Let's be strategic. Your goal is to be a top of mind brand for these people in that moment. Starting from that point, you quickly conclude you don't have to be in all 5 channels. There's no rule that says you must be everywhere your audience is engaged. That's not realistic. That's fine. Another thing that I've learned the last few years is that if you shift your goal from visits to views, you may get a lot more visibility. You can get visibility for your brand without attracting visitors to your website. That's strictly just through views. So like a LinkedIn newsletter, for example, can create tons of visibility, but it doesn't really drive much traffic. That's fine if our goal is to be a top-of-mind brand that people think of in the key moment when they needed that service. So I think that attracting visitors is harder than ever. Google never wanted to send free traffic to websites that never supported their business objectives or revenue.
And then they figured out a way not to have to.
They're very, very good at keeping their traffic. They spend billions, on keeping their traffic. They don't want to send any. They're not your partner. But a LinkedIn newsletter publisher, LinkedIn really does partner with them. LinkedIn wants you to succeed. LinkedIn promotes that for you. It's the first time in my career I'm sort of aligned with big tech, the same way that YouTubers always were and TikTokers are. If you decide to publish directly onto LinkedIn, not excluding your own blog, you still publish there. Not excluding your own email newsletter, you still have that. But suddenly you're aligned with the gazillion-dollar tech company, and you may be surprised at how fast that grows and how much reach it might have.
And it feels too that if you are really focusing on the right spaces, it's not just the reach itself, but the strategic reach. It's hitting the right people, which,
thank you, Jo.
Lack of waste, right?
It's not about quantity anyway. Yeah, you don't need 1 million, followers to grow a brand. In fact, I know, and you probably do too, hang out in this category of digital marketing for long enough, and you'll meet some big name influencers. And then when you get to know them, you sometimes find they're kind of struggling. Like, it's not easy. Like, they're really, the large audiences do not necessarily monetize well.
Right.
I know small brands you've never heard of that are growing like a weed. Like, it's crazy, like just printing money. It's about your niche. It's about knowing your audience. It's about knowing what wins the sales conversation. It's about creating content that supports that. So no, empathy, commitment, persistence.
Strategy and confidence.
Yeah, you don't need, it's not about there's no point in going viral, really. If you ever saw the analytics for a website that went viral, nothing really happens. Like, it's the next day, it's kind of over. It didn't really.
One sad spike.
Yeah. It's not the point of marketing. That never was.
Well, one thing that is having such a huge impact on the work that we're doing right now, and I mean the work that we do day to day, as well as when we think about outside the impact on our work, is AI. Mm-hmm. Obviously, AI in our content creation process, it's all over the place. Last year, you taught folks how to look at AI tools as a means for gap analysis, for example, mm-hmm. right? There are all of these non-writing ways that we can use AI to improve our content. But now it's proliferating. It's moving into agentic stuff where, for those of you who haven't thought about agentic AI, we're talking about AI tools that make decisions and take actions on their own. To me, that's a huge jump. That feels really big. So it feels like it's increasingly important to create content that's good for them, that's good for these agents that are going to be interacting with it, and the bots, of course, that are crawling it to be able to give answers to people who are querying AI. So as a content creator, what do I need to be thinking about when I'm making content now for this environment?
Well, there are two types of AI visitors to your website. One is a bot that's visited many times, just like Googlebot. It's just trying to understand, what you do. The other is the agent that clicks around, reports back to the user, can fill out your forms. It's going to get weird. So in the future, someone will say something like, I need a new water heater. I need a company that has 24-hour service. And, I trust these brands. Build me a spreadsheet of 6 companies that can help. And so the AI agent will go click around websites and gather data and information and then go put them on your spreadsheet. And then you will decide, which to call and take action. And then as a human, you visit a website. So to be in that game, you need to have a very descriptive website, a very easy to use website, a high ranking website. It doesn't need to be as beautiful for that visitor, but it needs to be exquisite in its clarity. So you more than ever, you need a site that answers all the questions, because the agentic AI doesn't get tired or lose patience. It will read every word. So AI becomes a different type of visitor. We have to think now, I'm going to say it, this is a weird idea, but AI accessibility. Privacy laws don't apply to this visitor. Analytics doesn't capture this visitor. Here's a huge problem everyone's about to realize is that this AI doesn't show up in your analytics. They don't accept cookies. Right? We're trying to find workarounds right now to be able to capture this person and track conversion rates from them. But not person. It's not a person. I don't know why I keep saying person.
Agent.
This user.
Yeah.
It's a user. AI agents open virtual browsers. They use virtual mice. They tap on virtual keyboards. They're using the internet, the visual internet. They understand. They can get past your CAPTCHA. They click on your drop downs. So that's what we have to do to generate leads from them, is to have much more detail. And I'm writing an article about this now, like AI ready websites. But past that, yeah, in content marketing, I would suggest that to be recommended by an AI, another massive challenge, huge question, 2025, how do you get AI to recommend your brand? Right for everybody. It's about brand mentions in the big picture AI training data. So probably a bunch of our content should be on other people's websites. Write guest posts, press releases, pitch, be present in roundups.
Partner, collaborate, co-market, all the things.
Like we're doing now, like webinars, like all of those formats, like live events. And then when you have the chance in that context, make sure that you give the tiny elevator pitch for your business, because that's what we're injecting into the training data. Your brand next to those words. So when someone says,
awesome,
what's the best X? Yeah, for Y, that AI mentions you.
Right. So you mentioned the agents and the robots and, the, again, I was going to say people checking out your website.
They're not human.
Right.
They're not human user.
How is that changing reporting, attribution, measurement? We already are facing this issue that, if we know that the website alone isn't going to serve up data that is necessarily useful or meaningful in terms of where somebody found us, got to know us, that kind of thing. How should we be measuring our success as content marketers then, if the measuring stick isn't around?
Right. Yeah. The SEO community is freaking out about this because it's not a keyword based thing, and it's not a rank that you're as the output. So you can prompt, what's the best water, emergency overnight water heater installation company in Chicago, and then change two of those words and you get a totally different response. The proper way to think about this is that Google has an algorithm that is deterministic, and it's literally ranking things. These are the most relevant URLs for that topic. AI crawled the internet and then summarizes things in a way that is not deterministic at all. It's probabilistic. These words, right? Where are we? Agentic,
but it's different. And this is a really important point, though, because I'm 100% sure that you've read Ethan Mollick's book, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So the idea that these models are tuned, right? That there's tuners, and they add a little bit of randomness to it, that completely changes the experience, the output, compared to something that's so algorithm based, like you explained.
So try to report on that. You can't really report on that. It's too unstable. So people are building tools now to track AI mentions, to track who appears for these queries, prompts. What are they called? So no, it's bottom line, this takes us back to like marketing in the 1990s or 80s or 70s, when you do the things, but you don't ever hope to connect it straight line. It was a weird era we were in, and the era is slowly ending, when you could sort of get attribution on things like clicks, and that specific action led to this specific outcome. That's becoming much more difficult now, the same way that it was difficult through the traditional marketing era. So it's fine. It's fine. But you never had perfect attribution. You're never going to have it perfect attribution. Just go do great marketing.
So really, you're saying that maybe we were kind of deluding ourselves a little bit because we had something to measure. So then we maybe imparted a bunch of meaning into the measurement that it may or may not have had.
Yeah, I put this money in, I get these leads out. There are still, PPC marketers can set higher expectations, because if you buy an ad, you got a landing page, it has a single specific offer, there's a call to action, people click it, they fill out the form, they're in your funnel, that you can sell to them. If they buy, you attribute it to that.
The line
ad.
is pretty straight. Yeah.
But for the content marketers, we've always been comfortable with really fuzzy, weird lines, because, what about word of mouth? 100% of marketers understand word of mouth is the best marketing channel. Where are your metrics for that? It's your number one channel. You don't measure that? No one does. Of course you can't.
No,
it's too chaotic.
We get anecdata on that, but we get really excited about it when we do.
Anecdata. That's great. I'm going to use that.
Well, so when we're talking about, trying to measure, trying to get an idea of ROI, obviously we care for ourselves, because we want to do good work and we want to be proud of the work we did and we want to know it has an impact. But we also have stakeholders and people who hold purse strings. And so we have to have conversations with them as well. And so as a content marketer, where do I start, right? Where do I start having that conversation with my stakeholders to help educate and inform about where they're putting their money and what they can be expecting to get out of it if we don't have these clear-cut measures to deliver.
What they need to hear is that we understand limited resources and prioritization. If I'm going to a meeting with a company that has, if I'm working at a brand and I know that we're strapped for budgets and time, I'm going to start that meeting by saying the 5 most important aspects of our marketing and impactful for sales are these. I am prioritizing these things because I know that they are more closely connected to revenue, and I'm deprioritizing these other things because we don't yet have the budget to invest at that level. We're not going to do original research first. First, we're going to write the articles that support the sales reps. First we're going to polish up our service pages. First, we're going to re-optimize our homepage for that key conversion and commercial intent key phrase. Just talk about the stuff that matters most, and you'll slowly build trust. And then when you get to the time when you're going to run an experiment, and by the way, all this stuff is experimental. Every idea you have is just a hypothesis. It makes sense,
which is something
right?
I love about it, actually, right? That's the fun thing, because you're learning. You're digging in and you're learning something new every time you do something.
I'm trying this weird thing, or I'm trying this relatively certain thing. Here's how I'm going to show. I'm going to report back to you what happened. This is the metric I'm hoping to move. If you're trying to get buy-in, though, you can also use marketing skills on your stakeholders. We can keep this on the down low, Jo. I'm going to share kind of, this is more insider stuff that kind of.
Excellent. I'm here for
use
it.
FOMO. Use FOMO to get approval from your executives by showing them that your competitors are pretty strong in these categories. They're getting lots of awareness in these channels. They're getting traction over here, and they're appearing over there. They're present in these ways. That is one of the most powerful levers for triggering visitors' behavior. It's also a very powerful lever for triggering stakeholder buy-in behavior. Yeah, use your marketing skills in those meetings.
Yes,
bring data, bring evidence.
You're right.
And trigger biases. It works.
You're right. It is our job as marketers to be persuasive. And if we think that the only people we need to persuade are buyers, we are wrong. For sure.
That's right. I know.
Thanks for joining us on the Changeover Podcast. Remember to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Wider.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let us know what you'd like to hear about next time by messaging Wider Group on social media.